Jim, if you want to go ahead and lead the discussion for the study session, I think that'd be appropriate.
Thank you, sir, and council. Good to see you all this evening here on the 1st of March. What I'd like to do is walk you through the city council agenda items. We have 3 major topics to discuss tonight. One is the city council agenda. The second will be a discussion led by Cammie Hayes about our financing of utility bonds. That's actually a good news story. And then lastly, Rick Myers will give an update on the amphitheater boat dock. I know that's another topic area of interest. So I'll go ahead and dive right into the city council agenda. So the first item that we'll cover is item number 5 under elections, under unfinished business, which is ordinance number 2021-02, which is the ordinance to partner with Aiken County Board of Registration and Elections to conduct a portion of the 2021 City of North Augusta Municipal General Election ordinance. That's a final reading. This one's been before the council before. And again, this allows us to partner with the election committee, or correction, with the county board of registration for us to be able to handle our general election here at the end of April. So I'll pause if there are any questions about this particular item. Hearing none, we'll move to item number 6 under elections. The 2021 Municipal General Election certification of candidates from Municipal Election Commission motion to accept. So this is essentially the parties presenting their candidates for the Municipal Election Commission, and for you as the council to certify that event. I'll pause for any questions on that. Hearing none, we're going to go to number 7 under annexation, ordinance number 2021-03, to change the corporate limits of the city of North Augusta by annexing approximately 0.4 acres of property fronting on Gregory Lake Road and owned by the city of North Augusta. This is an ordinance of the first reading. If you look in your study packet under item 7, what you'll see there is there's a little sliver of land. It's kind of shaped like a triangle. And this was a piece of property that we missed earlier during the annexation. And through kind of our discussions with Aiken County and GIS, this piece of property also has to be added from an annexation perspective in order for us to complete the full annexation as we go forward. So if you look in your packet, you can see there's a little, basically shaped like a triangle that's right off Gregory Lake and before Shadow Hill Road. So this is to be listed as public use, but I wanted to make sure you all are tracking. It's a new item, but this is to clean up old business, if you will, to take care of an existing plot of land. It just wasn't fully annexed. And I'll pause for any questions on there from you all. Or if Libby wants to add something to the discussion that I may have missed. Hearing nothing. Actually, I see the mayor's mic is bobbling there. Mr. Mayor, do you have something? Sir, we got you coming in garbled.
Hey, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Just looking at the map that you got here, it looks like it's the portion of Aiken County that's in there. Is that correct? Because the rest of that would be Edgefield County. It looks like the county lines. So did we just miss that little part when we did the annexation last time?
That's my understanding, sir. Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't look like much, but yeah, it's right there where the county line is. Okay, thanks.
Well, actually, it was all these tax map parcels. When you're trying to type them, sometimes you drop a letter or switch two around. So that's all it was. We're just correcting a typo that was in the previous ordinance. It was caught by, I guess, Aiken County GIS, as the last possible reviewer. So it's not a big deal.
Yes, sir. Hearing no other questions or comments, I'll move on to item 8 under finance, resolution number 2021-05, resolution approving financing terms for the financing of vehicles and equipment. Cammie can certainly talk this in better detail than I can, but this is the finance department goes around and gets basically the best financing rates they can for our lease purchase items. And so Cammie was able to find us a really good rate, competitive rate here locally. And so this is a resolution for you all as the council to adopt so that we can proceed on our lease purchase items for this fiscal year. Cammie, is there anything else you'd like to add on that?
The only thing I would add is that the ability to participate in the lease purchase program has already been approved through the budget ordinance. So this is just a follow-up item in selecting who we're going to use for lease purchase, which is BB&T or Truist Bank, and the rate is 0.79. Typically, we haven't had to approve these financing terms, but they are requiring us to do so via a formal resolution. So you probably haven't seen this before. You're used to just approving lease purchase through the budget process. This is just a resolution by council accepting them as our provider and the lease terms.
Thank you, Cammie. Appreciate it. Mr. Mayor and Council, any questions on this item?
Yeah, I've got a quick question. Since we're getting financing terms after we approve the budget was obviously approved, must have been approved assuming a certain lease purchase terms. Cammie, do you know what we made the assumption? Because 0.79% seems pretty cheap, so I'm assuming this is probably less than we assumed in the budget. Is that accurate?
That's correct. We historically have been, for the past few years, doing a conservative rate of around 2.25 in the budget, just because rates do fluctuate to allow some conservative measures. So we will have some small savings this year with our lease purchase.
Good deal. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
No questions, but that's a phenomenal rate. So good job, Cammie.
How can I get a rate like that?
Kevin, can you help us out?
No, I can't.
So our next item is item number 9 under planning and development, which is resolution number 2021-06, authorizing the city of North Augusta to enter into a professional services contract with the Lower Savannah Council of Governments to perform planning services for the 2021 Comprehensive Plan 5-year update. And so before I turn this over to Libby, I would tell you that we are required to update our plan, and that our planning shop under Libby's leadership was able to shop around some different options. And they say they have a significant cost savings by going through the Lower Savannah Council of Governments to contract out that service. And so this is something that we're required to do. And this gives us the best possible rate to get us into compliance for keeping our 5-year plan. But Libby, is there anything you wanted to add to this particular one?
I don't have anything to add unless anybody has any specific questions or anything they need to know about it.
Libby, would you talk about the dollar amounts that are shown in the sample contract and the resolution?
Sure. I can touch on that. Just to kind of go over the draft contract that was sent, page 3 adds up to be $35,000 instead of $25,000. And that's just a minor typo. We've got it fixed. It just wasn't in time to go out with your agenda. So the authorizing resolution limits the amount to $25,000. So that would be what we would go with as staff.
Thank you. I thought I'd preempt Fletcher with that question.
I had it marked to ask.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just comment. I'm sorry, did I cut somebody off?
No, sir, just by all means, go ahead.
Libby, since I will not be a part of the discussion in the future of this, I guess as an innocent bystander at that time, or an interested bystander, I'll be anxious to see exactly what comes out of this 5-year update in terms of the information in the comprehensive plan. Because I think to get anything meaningful out of the COG, it's going to take a lot of work on their part. Not disparaging them, but just saying I think there's a lot that needs to be looked at and reviewed. So I hope that we actually get a plan that makes sense, particularly when it's looked at in terms of the development code, which is being done concurrently at this time for the revision. I just wish you luck.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
One of the potential benefits of this is this group that's doing the revision is not the original, document author. So you get a different set of eyes on the document and get some potential updates that way. And I'll be curious to see what they come back with, but they'll come back and finish this product before the end of the calendar year. All right, moving on to number 10. This will probably be the one that may end up generating the most discussion. So Tom Caesar's online as well to help me out here in the deep end. So this is engineering and public works under resolution number 2021-07. And so this is reprioritizing projects and funding for the Aiken County Capital Project Sales Tax 2. And so what the city had planned on through the budget cycle for this calendar year was to take our C fund dollars and apply that directly into the 5 Notch Road project and do a paving project from there. We've had a lot of assistance from Representative Hickson with SEDOT to get other portions of 5 Notch Road paved as well. So there is a South Carolina DOT project now that provides for paving from 5 Notch Road north of the Edgefield County line. There's a separate project under SCDOT that provides for paving of 5 Notch Road from that Aiken Edgefield County line to just south of I-20, where the new development is. And then this portion of the city's project would be from just south of I-20 on 5 Notch Road all the way down to Knox Avenue, to Georgia Avenue. And so the original amount of C fund money was enough to cover the small portion we were doing, but in order for us to meet the larger stretch, we would have to dip into another fund source to fully pave this road. And that funding source we've identified, we have some leftover money, not a lot, but some leftover money in CPST 2, and that money would be used to round out the C fund to be able to finish the paving. So at the end of the day, what the city of North Augusta would be the beneficiary of is fully paved 5 Notch Road from Georgia Avenue all the way up past the Edgefield County line. What it does not do, and this is strictly a paving project, so this does not do anything for lights. It does not do anything to widen the road. Those are longer term projects and much more expensive, but this does allow for us to take care of an immediate need on the road itself. And so what this allows us to do is cost transfer money through the SCDOT contract for us to be able to execute on this timeline to get this project done. So normally we would provide this in a study session, and then the following city council meeting, we would bring this for resolution. My understanding from Tom is this one's a little more time sensitive, and SCDOT has been moving out with pretty good speed in trying to move this contract along, and I suspect that's at the urging of Representative Hickson. So we appreciate him being engaged on this. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom to see if there's anything else he wanted to cover that I may have glossed over as far as the project itself. But essentially, what we're asking for is to use all of our C fund money, which is originally scheduled for this 5 Notch Road, improvement anyway, and then to add some additional funding from CPST 2 to lengthen the project from a road resurfacing perspective to give us a holistic look at Five Notch Road. So Tom, over to you.
Well, I don't know if I can add anything to that. You really covered it well and thoroughly. This contract that we're requesting an extension of the DOT's contract, it has already been bid and awarded. So that's what is sort of creating somewhat of a sense of urgency to get this approved. So they're ready to go with this project, and it has a completion date of November 30th this year. As a matter of fact, another member of my staff is at the Aiken CTC meeting right now as we speak, making this same presentation to them and with the request that they get the programming request to the DOT as soon as possible. The amount requested in the resolution is somewhat more than we expect to spend on this. We're trying to make sure that we can cover all known costs and as well as any potential additional costs that could come up in the course of construction. Our known shortfall right now is based on the estimate provided by the resident construction engineer is approximately $95,000.
I had to ask Tom to kind of round that up a little bit just because there's, I didn't want it to come back to the council and ask for a second, look at CPST2 funding. So we're pretty sure that the amount we're asking for today will cleanly cover the project. There was some discussion and debate about, basically paying for folks to do the traffic, lane openings and whatnot, and then also just looking at overall cost overrun. So whatever money is left over from the project, still be able to reside in CPST2, and then it'll be up to the council at a future time to determine where we'd like to spend that money or to which projects we want to apply it. So this money isn't necessarily out the door. We just want it there to be able to execute if we need it, and whatever's not executed stays in CPST2.
Now, Jim and Tom, I have about 3 questions quickly. Now, Jim, what you just said, there might be a little money. And I know we've talked about my Curtis Drive, paving that little tip end of it.
And I'm smiling because I was thinking that you were going to ask me that very question. And Tom and I talked about that at length. And so when we look at CPST2, the project list, this falls very cleanly under road resurfacing. And unfortunately, at the end of Curtis Lane, that's a larger than a road resurfacing project. That is a full road build. And so we did ask that question because I know that was something that you would like to see addressed. And I think we can. We'll just have to do it using a different methodology.
Okay. All right. That answers that. Number 2. Now, Tom, don't get mad at me. But I didn't know that going on from 5 Notch crossing Georgia over to Knox. I've always said we had that backwards. It should have been a right and straight lane versus the straight and left turn. Is there any way that could get reversed up there at that end? Because I'm telling y'all, when you go across George Avenue from 5 Notch, it is not a straight across. You sort of have to bear right and then go into it. And a lot of us just sit there for 2 and 3 lights because you can't get through there. So, Tom, I brought this up several times, and I'm just going to bring it up one more time.
I doubt that, but this resurfacing project is not the opportunity to correct that or to change that.
Okay.
That intersection.
I just wanted to throw that. Phil, that's another. Jim, that's another little beef project I have too. Okay. Now, also, Tom, did I read something in our packet about Scott's, right there at Mossy Creek, Scott Road? I don't know why I have that on my mind, but what about, I've also talked about the road right behind Mossy Creek where the buses, Aiken County buses park. I think, if my memory's correct, that is Mitchell. That is also another horrible area because I think it is city limit, and it goes. It's just, I'm telling you, a dirt road with your tires, everything. You go through there, just boom, 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 boom. So
Yeah,
I'm just bringing those up. Those are projects that I still. These people are living on that. We call it the dirt road. I mean, when they call me, Miss Pat, the dirt road, and yeah, they're right. It's a dirt road with a bunch of holes in it. It's terrible.
that's Madison Avenue.
Madison. Okay, well, I knew it started with the M. Right.
That's a county road.
Well, now we've gone back and forth. You sure? Because that somehow the county said it wasn't, or somebody I've talked to. So. But it is, if you think if it's county, I'll go in that direction with it. But that road, I'm telling y'all, needs to be paved. And that's all my questions.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I appreciate it. Councilman Presnell?
Yeah. Hey, Tom, and I'm sure you have done your homework on this. Are there any other roads that this could be used to that are in worse need? I mean, 5 Notch Road, yeah, it'd be nice to be brand new, but it's not that bad. I come up and down it several times, and then I still wonder, we're fixing to repave it, but I just think with the growth we're going to have in the future, we're going to have to get with DOT and possibly, I guess, the federal government to go over I-20 and get that widened at some point. But like I say, I'm sure you've done that, and this is probably needed the most, but I just want to make sure there was no other place that's in worse need than 5 Notch right now.
We don't believe so. 5 Notch Road has been our number one on our priority list for resurfacing. We've been deferring it for many years because we've been hoping that there would be a greater widening project that would come along. And but we're just at the point now where if we continue to defer that, we're going to be, into significant structural deterioration of that roadway.
So I'm assuming if there is a widening project in the future, that's probably more handled by DOT than it would be the city. Is that correct?
That's right. We still have the remnant of in sales tax 2 that could be contributed to help to sort of kickstart a larger project. But yeah, that would be a project to be funded through arts and or other means.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Well, Tom, and I know Tom remembers, that widening of Martintown Road, I know it's been 28 years. When I first got on council, that was brought up, 5 Notch would be widened, and here it is 28 years later. It still happened. So I think that's a give up dream right there. But I do think we do need, as a council, to look at our road surfacing. I mean, you seem like we're seeing a lot of potholes in roads now, and I don't know if it's been like the last few years with as much rain as we've had, if that could have been what's caused it. But we do need to look at that again at some time in the future with our road surfacing and all.
I've got a question that's not directed towards Tom. This is to you, Jim, and I'm sure you may not have an exact answer, but do we have a plan for closing out sales tax 2?
Say it one more time, sir.
Do we have a plan for closing out sales tax 2?
I do not. So I had a more granular plan for CPST 1 that involved, quite frankly, the bridge that I briefed the council on over by the new public safety headquarters. And even with that, no plan survives contact with the enemy. And some of that money is potentially going to have to be used for stream bed stabilization. When the pictures that I sent and some of the updates where the slope was coming away from the the stream bed itself and opening up and showing, water lines, utility lines. Part of CPST1 can be used in that way to stabilize that stream. So we may or may not be able to pursue CPST1's original plan as briefed. On CPST2, we were just starting to dive into that, but ultimately, as Tom allayed, we could certainly use the money for road resurfacing partially this year, and then the remainder of that money could be used either in the way that Tom described, where we could partner with Arts and do something as far as one of the road projects there, or because it involves road resurfacing, to Councilwoman Carpenter's point, if we use future C-Fund dollars, we can marry up some of the CPST2 funding and use that to augment for road resurfacing if we think we've got some significant areas in the city that needs that kind of attention. So we haven't done a full staff study of the remainder of CPST2, but that's kind of our current line of thinking. Hopefully that answers your question at least somewhat. Councilman Dickert, are you still there? Or are you pondering the? I think Councilman Dickert's computer is frozen.
Yeah, it looks like it.
While we're waiting on Councilman Dickert to come back.
Jim, if I could, I'm sorry to interrupt you. And you and I have talked, and Libby and Tom as well. I think roads and arts are something that's ripe for council briefings and work sessions on. I think we've not been as a council is involved in that discussion because there's a huge political aspect to it that I think if we can get up to speed on it, I think it would be a benefit. So sometime in the future, Jim, I know we've talked, if you can just get that scheduled, I think it'd be beneficial for everybody.
Yes, sir. Just taking that note here. Do I have any other questions or comments from the council on item number 10, engineering public works, for this resolution to reprioritize CPST2? Okay, last but not least, under this first item of the city council agenda review is under planning and development, which is the planning commission recommendation memorandum number 21-010, West Martintown Road corridor study, receipt of information by council. So really this is our formal handoff, if you will, of the Martintown Road study to the city council for you to all review it at your leisure. And we intend to present this at the city council at our next meeting for adoption by the council. This went through the planning commission and they had an opportunity to take a look at this and make sure that they had their recommendations in from prioritizations and their information is in there as well. And Libby, if you have anything you'd like to add to this one, the bottom line is you have no vote required tonight on this item. This is strictly us presenting to you the completed staff study on Martintown Road.
If you don't mind, I just want to add that none of these projects are finally designed. So these are just the recommended projects from the traffic engineer that we hired to do this project, AECOM. So there will be some more details to iron out as we move forward, but adoption by the council kind of gives staff something to grab onto when we go looking for funds and we go looking for how to build these projects and get that part moving.
Thank you, Libby. Appreciate it. So any questions from council on item number 11, planning and development? Okay, hearing none, that concludes the first item on our study session, which was the city council agenda. What we'll do now is move to item number 2 under finance for the city of North Augusta current utility bonds council discussion. And so I'm going to turn this over to Cammie to talk about our utility bonds, and overall a good news story that Cammie is going to be able to give to you tonight here in study session. So Cammie, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, we currently have two outstanding loans for the utility system. One from 2014 for the raw water storage facility, and one from 2015 for our water treatment plant upgrades. What we've been doing is monitoring the interest rates. So those loans are currently through the South Carolina Drinking Water Revolving Loan Program at a 2% interest rate. We believe that we can get less than 2% at this time in discussions with our financial advisors. We've run some numbers and looked at, so we currently have two debt service payments. We're looking at trying to consolidate these loans. So we'll basically refund them and consolidate them into one loan. We believe that rate will come in at less than 2%, which would give us approximately $300,000 in savings across the term of the bond. Another thing that this will do that could be beneficial for us for our infrastructure rehabilitation is we currently had to deposit about $1.7 million in reserves to the drinking fund, revolving loan fund, because our utility system isn't rated. So they required us to make a deposit back when we borrowed the money. So that money is just sitting there in a reserve fund. It can be used to make our final payment. By refunding these bonds, it frees up that cash to come back to the city. So we'll have an influx of 1.7. We can combine that with some of the CPST4 money allocated for infrastructure projects and tackle more things that we need to do with our infrastructure. So overall, this is a positive move for the city. We're looking at doing a bank placement. There are two options we could have gone with: public sale or bank placement. The public sale, a lot more complicated, a lot more administrative work. It would require us to go through a rating of our utility system. It's going to cost a lot more money. It's going to take a lot more time. It could produce a greater return. But when we looked at the benefits, the bank placement makes more sense right now. It's a quick turnaround. We have prepayment flexibility. You wouldn't have that through a public sale. You'll have that 10-year period. That's a no-call period where you can't pay down your debt. There's really very minimal administrative work required with the bank placement, and we don't have much interest rate risk. We can turn the closing around on the bank placement. Going through the public sale, we're looking at a month or two down the road. And, so you just have that risk with your interest rate moving around. So we already have done the RFP to banks. Their rates are due back at your next council meeting. So we'll be able to brief you on an update of how those came in. We anticipate bringing you a ordinance for first reading as well at the next council meeting for bank placement of refunding these loans. And I'll turn it back over for any questions.
Thanks, Cammie. Again, grateful for the work you and the finance team have done on this, to be able to make some smart decisions and recommendations on our city finances to be able to save some money for us in the long term. So I'll turn it back over to council and mayor for any kind of comments or questions.
Well, Cammie has just been a carrier of good news tonight. Thank you, Cammie.
Okay, Cammie, help me understand. Currently we have loans, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And we're just basically transferring from one agency, the state agency, to banks, so they remain loans. So
Yeah, we'll consolidate into one single loan.
So this doesn't affect. These are not. This is when they're consolidated. It will not be considered as a bond, which would affect the 8% limit that we have.
So these are for the utility system. So the only impacts related to utility system is that we have to monitor our debt covenant. So it is a bond, but it's on the utility system side, which is separate from the 80% limit that you're referring to. This is only for our water and sewer system.
Okay, what is there a limit there?
Just that we have to meet a certain debt service coverage ratio, which we monitor. We're not borrowing any additional money, so our ratio will not be impacted through this transaction.
Okay, so it's just basically a kind of a no effort transfer.
Yes, that will result in savings over the remaining term of the bond of approximately $300,000.
And they're how long? 30 years when they were issued?
They were 20-year bonds, and the remaining term, I believe, was 2035 on the 14 and 2036 on the 15. So we're looking at a 2035 close for final payment on these.
Okay, thank you.
And so, since these are through the utility funds, this $300K of savings over the next 15 years or so, those savings, I guess, remain in the utility fund and just free up additional funds to do other utility type projects. Is that where we're going to see the savings? Because it doesn't come back to the general fund.
That's right. This stays in the utility system. If you'll recall, during the budget process, there was a transfer previously to the construction fund, the utility construction fund, and that transfer got moved down to zero because of the construction projects we did, the raw water storage facility and the water treatment plant. So with these savings, we can restore the transfer probably about $25,000 a year, and we can start building on that transfer and getting money moving annually back to the construction fund, which is the fund that we use to do our large rehabilitation or construction projects related to the system. So that's where you'll see the savings. It'll transfer to that construction fund and continue to build up so we can do large projects.
But if we're only going to be moving $25K a year, that's not going to buy much. I guess it's a start, but
yeah, it'll be a cumulative savings up to the $300,000.
right. Thank you. Good work.
Any other questions from council? Hearing none, I'll move us to the final agenda item. Mr. Mayor, do you have something? I see you unmuted.
Well, I just wanted to say, to follow on what Fletcher just said, is that, Cam, we appreciate the work you and your staff do on a daily basis to keep the opportunities like this in the forefront so we can take advantage of them when it makes sense. So I want to thank you for that. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mayor, we'll move on to item number 3, our final item on the study session agenda for tonight. And so item 3 is Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, Riverside Village Boat Dock Council discussion. And Rick Meyer's been doing some good work on the boat dock. And I've had multiple requests from council members on, just trying to get an azimuth check, if you will, on where we were. So I figured we'd take this opportunity for Rick to be able to, give us some information on the boat docks, make sure we're moving in the right direction, or to take any guidance from council as required as we move forward on this project. So Rick, thanks for being here tonight, and over to you.
Thank you, Jim. Let me refresh everybody where we were back in September 2020. If you remember, we talked about this. We currently have $100,000 of Aiken County watercraft tax funds for boat docks. In addition to that, Aiken County has an additional $323,000 available. We would not be able to get all of that, but we could probably request an additional 100 or so thousand, depending upon the scope of our project. The good news with all of that money is no match is required for these funds. The city would be required to pay up front and request reimbursement for our project. Also, federal funds are available, but if we go after federal funds, they would require 25% match for the dock. The fifth point I'd like to make is the site plan for this dock, including dimension of the dock, must be approved by South Carolina DNR. We met with those folks. In just a minute, I'm going to show you their approved location for the site of the dock. The 6th point that I would make is we are reaching out to 4 contractors that DNR recommended to us. They are Gator Docks, Crescent Docks, Alpha Construction, and Water's Edge Aluminum. In fact, we have our first meeting Thursday morning at 9 o'clock with Water's Edge Aluminum. And now, if Ricky, if you'll cue up the pictures, I want to show council, mayor and council, where the location is and some of the ideas we have for the dock.
Yes. Okay. You should be able to do it now. Perfect.
Okay. So the top left picture that you see the amphitheater, and you can kind of see the yellow, my yellow artistic drawing over there. That is the location that DNR has picked out. There we go. Thank you, Ricky. It is behind the right field line of SRP Park and over to the left of the amphitheater. Next slide, Ricky. Okay. This picture is the current boat slips at the Landing Apartments. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's 6 slips, and you can see the way that is built. And that is one idea that we have for our own boat dock. All right, if you'll show the 3rd picture.
Can I just real quick make a comment? I believe the live stream through Facebook, folks are not able to see the pictures that council is seeing, but Sharon, of course, can include the pictures in the.
Okay, this 3rd picture that you're looking at is a linear dock down in Beaufort, South Carolina. And one of the advantages of this dock, obviously, is if you have a boat taxi or large tour group, easier for them to load and unload passengers off of the dock. And that's why we wanted to show you this picture. All right, Ricky, next picture. This picture is at the 5th Street Bridge in Augusta. And if you'll see in this picture, you kind of have both. You have a linear dock at the left side of the screen, and then you have boat slips at an angle. And this is an interesting concept that we kind of like, a combination of boat slips and a linear dock. All right, next picture, Ricky. Yeah, you can't see this real good, but Kevin Whaley inserted the docks, the boat slips where our location is in the picture. Again, behind SRP Park there, what it would look like if we just put boat slips in. And then let's go to picture. There you go. That's better. You can see that better. And then finally, picture 6. And forgive me, but this is my artistic drawing of doing a linear dock out front and slanting the boat slips, kind of way they did at the 5th Street Bridge area over in Augusta. This would be like a combination again, where we had a little bit of both. You have both slips and you've got a linear dock so that you could accommodate, easier to accommodate the larger boat groups that are coming in. And what we'd like to hear from council is what you think on boat slips versus linear dock, and direction that you would like for us to go.
I guess, Rick, I'll go ahead and start since I've probably been pushing this harder than anybody. Whether you do a combination, a linear dock is not going to work. It works in Beaufort. It works at the lake. You don't have current. It's got to have slips. Now, it depends on what we want. Do we want personal people pulling up, being able to access the restaurants, or is this strictly for the water taxi people? If it's water taxi, you need a linear dock. I like the combination. I just don't think the funds are, I don't know if we're going to be able to afford that. I know you said we got 100,000 from the state and about 25,000 from the county. And then if we go federal, we got to match 25%. So, I don't know if a combination is doable, but from a strictly just personal watercraft standpoint, the slips are the best way. You get more boats parked there. If you do a linear, I don't know how many of y'all have ever been down to the boat ramp that we have. We have a good linear dock there. You can only tie 2 boats up at a time. And that's what would exactly end up happening on a linear dock would be my fear. A combination would be great. I just don't know how much we have for that. I know me and you have talked, Rick, and I know, we have a rough idea of what the slip dock would cost. But then if we do hardscaping, this, that, and other, I think we're going to be over budget. So from a boater's perspective, that's kind of my standpoint. Also with the slip dock, you can use the backside of it for kayakers and canoes and things of that nature to be able to tie their boats off, because a bigger boat's not going to be able to, get behind that like you would if you were in a canoe or kayak. So, that's kind of my 2 cents worth on it. But again, budget wise, I just don't know if we're going to be able to do the combination, but I'd like to hear from if anybody else has any ideas.
I would say that I think that last slide with that combination would be ideal because we don't know exactly what the final use will be once it's all done. We don't know what the demand will be. I'm not an engineer, but it seems like the slip part should be downstream, so it'd be easier for them to get in and out. But I'm not a designer. It's just from my boating experience, I would think the slip would be downstream. But I would think the combo would be much better for being able to service the taxi industry as well as the personal craft. And I would assume there would be space on the bank side for kayakers and things like that too. So I think keeping it as versatile as possible would be my desire, especially if we can get it to work with the funding sources.
I'd like to just chime in and make sure that we are providing good opportunities for the kayakers, because I think we end up seeing a lot of that these days. Boating, I'll lean on others that got more experience there on what's best. I just want to make sure that we do have the ability for kayakers, canoers, and also it needs to be on budget, and we need to make this happen quickly. We've had these funds allocated and approved for quite a while, and we were supposed to get this done when Riverside Village Project Jackson was happening. Time's a wasting. Let's get moving.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd have to add to that is I don't know a thing in the world about boat slips or boating. So I don't have much to add on that. I'll leave that to the folks that are more knowledgeable. But, I would piggyback on what Fletcher said. If we've got the money allocated, we just need to make sure it stays on budget and we use that money that's been allocated for it. The the combo seems to be a nice idea if it's doable from a financial standpoint. Like I said, I'll leave that to Rick. I'll leave that to the team and the experts to make that decision, but I'll support it. We just need to get moving.
Hey, Rick, do you know how strong the current is right in there?
It can be pretty strong because we're on the upside of that bridge. Absolutely. As compared to the landing docks, they don't get as strong a current on the other side of 13th Street Bridge. And I see Eric, he knows better than I do. You got a pretty strong current right there.
I'm gonna tell you, Bob, a lot of this depends on how much water they're letting out of Clark's Hill versus how much is being let out of the locking dam. It varies. I have been out there before and watched somebody jump in, and literally it was probably in May, but I mean, he floated away from the boat 10 foot in about 2 seconds. So the currents can get strong there, but again, it varies from time to time. I mean, I've been out there on some days where you're out in the middle and you're barely moving 10 feet in 2 minutes. But under normal conditions, especially right there at the bridge, the channel actually is right in the center there. And it's not like up at the, and I've seen it strong up at the boat ramp too, when the water's high. So yes, dealing with currents is probably the biggest issues. But it varies. I mean, there's some days it's almost dead calm. And then there's other days that if you jump in, you better be prepared. I've seen it several times.
Okay, I think we need to look at the combination and be aware of the kayakers and the canoes as well. Sort of feather those in there some kind of way. I'm not an architect. But my biggest concern was the amount of the current right in there, but I would support the combo.
Generally, just from me boating out there, the kayakers pretty much, you don't see them. They pretty much come to the boat ramp and go up to the rocks. I'm not saying it's not possible. You see a lot of the regatta people down that low. But I think it's one of those, if you build it, they will come. I talked to a friend of mine who's a big canoer and kayaker, Rick. And if you can check with whoever you're meeting with, he said there's some kind of mats that you could install maybe on the backside where they can paddle up on it, makes it easier for them to get on and off. That might be a good idea. The other thing I would suggest, because I know our funds are limited to about $125,000, and I know that the 6 slip that I got the quote for and sent to everybody, and we still got to do hardscape and all of that stuff. I would just say if we go with the 6 slip with the ability to add on the flat dock, because currently, there's no guarantee that the tour boat, the Patriot, is going to even, make North Augusta a stop. I would, I know I've talked to Rachel and Jim about that and seeing if they would be willing to come to North Augusta. But, I just feel like we could talk about this until we're blue in the face, but I think it'd be great to get something in there with the ability to add on to, depending on the popularity, but maybe look and see if that's feasible, Rick. If we can say, look, our budget's this, can we get this installed with hardscape, ramp and everything? And then as funds become more available, can we add on to it down the line?
Eric, I do want to point out we may have as much as 200,000 instead of 125. Yeah.
Oh, well, if we've got that, then you're meeting with some people Thursday. I would say definitely the combo. I mean, I know the original price was almost 50,000 just for the 6 slip. That was installed too. So hopefully, yeah, the combo would be great. I think that's the way to go, because of the tour boat and, there are some bigger boats out on the river that, you never know, might want to dock right there.
Okay. I would just add one more time that, definitely make sure they understand or are looking at the kayak accessibility, because a lot of people do that. So.
Yes, sir.
This would be a floating docks, floating slips.
Yes.
The river comes up. Okay. Thank you.
And Rick, and I'm sure you remember Ken McDowell, even though he's not on council now, Ken McDowell was a big pusher of this when we started riverfront development. So you might just give him a call too. He might have some good suggestions and ideas on this.
last point real quick, because I know we're running out of time. Rick, I think you made a comment on this the last presentation. Just want to make sure we don't forget about security, surveillance, if we're going to expand the city camera system or have a camera that can overlook this. Just want to make sure lighting and, we don't just focus just on the dock. We look at the whole aspect of lighting and safety too.
Thank you, Fletcher.
Rick, just a couple questions. Do you know why DNR picked the spot that they did? I'm not opposed to it. I'm just curious.
Yeah, the slope there at the bank is not as steep.
Okay, so to cut down, because that's obviously a key part is access. So I think then you're saying access is reasonable from the greenway down to the boat slips. And is DNR the final approval, or do we have to go to the Corps of Engineers to get approval for this as well? Since I think they approve docks, don't they?
Yes, you have to go to the Corps as well.
And we may have used up all our chits with the Corps. I don't know. Okay, thank you. I think that was a good presentation, a good discussion. And I think, Rick, the consensus was a combination of slips and a general docking area. And I, if you can get with the DNR and obviously figure out what the constraints are in terms of length and how far out, and those kind of details. Yeah, and I know you will. And let's get a plan. Thank you.
Thank
Rick,
you.
also, before you go, I know we're short on time. If you meet with these peoples, I'd like to kind of personally know, how long, if we've got the funds available, how quick can it be done? I am getting calls left and right from my boater friends, from people down at Riverside Village. When is this going to be done? When is this going to be done? So if you could, give me a timeline and give me a call and just kind of, to the best of your knowledge, that would be great too.
Yes, sir.
Mayor and Council, I think we've got 3 minutes to spare. I have no other topics to cover here in the study session. I didn't know if you wanted to take a comfort break, but we'll be prepared to start the City Council meeting at 7 p.m.
Yep, I appreciate that. That's a good idea. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the City Council to order, and I ask you to stand for the invocation and the pledge. Dear God, we gather together on this first day of March. The change of the season is upon us. We're thankful for the cool temperatures we've had, and we also anticipate the warm temperatures in our future. We also continue to deal with this pandemic of the COVID-19 virus. We know that it's hit many of us personally, especially with our close family and friends. We continue to ask that they recover and regain their health and return to the vital citizens that they are in this community. We ask you to give this council wisdom as it deals with the items on tonight's agenda and those that will appear in the future. We're thankful for our employees who serve the citizens of this city every day. We certainly ask that each one of them be under your watch and remain safely. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we're all present. First of all, council, you've been provided the study session and council meeting minutes from our meetings on February 1st. If there are no corrections or additions, they'll stand approved as provided. Approved. Moving on now to ordinance number 2021-02, an ordinance to partner with Aiken County Board of Registration and Elections to conduct a portion of the 2021 City of North Augusta Municipal General Election. This is the final reading of this ordinance. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Toole? Do I have a second? Mr. Brooks?
Second.
Thank you. Kelly, you want to just give a brief overview of this, if it warrants it?
Yeah, basically what we have done with this is just made arrangements with Aiken County for them to handle a portion of the election. The Municipal Election Commission still is essentially in charge ultimately, but the Election Commission, who has the equipment and does this regularly, will basically provide the equipment, man the various locations in order to conduct, I guess what I would refer to as administrative kind of portions of the election, as far as the people actually coming in and rendering their votes. And then the Election Commission is responsible for the ultimate counting and determining the winners.
Okay, thank you. I was advised before the council meeting tonight that there were no comments provided by citizens either on a specific agenda item on the agenda or on items, just comments on the items not on the agenda of a general nature. So, council, are there any comments?
Other than, Kelly, do we know if all polls will be open, or they'll run it like this group did, Republicans, in February? I mean, we had several
Yeah.
places
I
combined.
really don't know for sure, but I know that they're going to try to limit the number of locations within the requirements of the statute, just for purposes of saving money.
Funny. Okay, good. Thank you.
But again, everything will be advertised well in advance of the voting, so you'll know where you vote.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. Since we're virtual, I have to do a roll call vote. Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Dickert,
Yes.
Mr. McGee,
Yes.
Mr. Fresnel,
Yes.
Mr. Toole.
Yes.
The chair also votes yes. It's a unanimous vote, 7-0. Moving on to item number 6, which is related again to the general election. It's a certification of candidates for Municipal Election Commission. Kelly, do we have to take a vote on this, or we just accept it without?
Well, I was looking at that, and I think we generally do it by vote.
Okay.
And actually, I was going to mention one other thing to the 2 council members that are involved. We have always taken the position that it was not a conflict or an ethical violation to take part in just accepting this. But I will tell you, I have gotten so concerned with some of the rulings coming out of the Ethics Commission that I would suggest that the 2 members that are on council now that are involved in this election potentially recuse themselves from this. And the reason is I'm not as concerned in this case about where the motion is to accept. But if we ever had a situation where someone had been a candidate and then the vote came before the group and the motion, they voted against accepting, I think you get into more of a potential conflict ethics situation. And the other thing we talked about at one time, well, many times we have 3 council members and a mayor who would be possibly disqualified. But as long as you have a quorum when you begin, it doesn't make any difference how many disqualify themselves, the vote of the majority that remains. So my suggestion, just to be on the safe side and avoid anyone making a comment that maybe the 2 council members that are involved in this election might recuse themselves from taking part.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. I would just suggest, since it's likely that you do not have the recusal forms, if you so decide, and again, I think Kelly would support me that this is your individual decision that you're making as to whether or not to recuse yourself or not. If you will state the reason for your recusal and then stop by and see Sharon to sign the recusal form, I think tomorrow that would be an efficient way to do it. Would you agree, Kelly?
Yes, I think that's fine.
Okay. So do I have a motion, let's see, to accept the certificate of candidates, which, and I'll read them for those who may not have the certification in front of them. From the Democratic Party, the candidates are Richard Adams for mayor, Trina Mackey for council member. From the Republican Party, the candidates are Britt Williams for mayor, Pat Carpenter for council member, David McGee for council member, and Jennifer McCauley for council member. So
I'd make a motion that we accept these.
Mr. Brooks, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who was that? Fletcher, I thought it was. Okay, thank you. Since there are no comments from citizens, Council, are there any additional comments that you would like to make?
I'd
David?
definitely go ahead and say I'd like to recuse myself from voting on this to recuse myself of any ethical issues regarding voting on accepting this petition here.
Okay, thank you.
And I, Pat Carpenter, is the same thing. I'm recusing myself due to the fact that I am a council member that will be listed on this general election, which is held April 27th, 2021. I will come by the office tomorrow to sign my recusal form, which will be Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021.
Okay, thank you both. Council, any additional comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question again by roll call. Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Mr. Dickert,
Yes.
Mr. Presnell,
Yes.
Mr. Toole.
Yes.
The chair also votes to accept, so the vote is 5-0 to accept with 2 recusals. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 7, which is ordinance number 2021-03 to change the corporate limits of the city of North Augusta by annexing plus or minus 0.40 acres of property fronting on Gregory Lake Road and owned by the city of North Augusta. This is the first reading of this ordinance. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. President, second, Ms. Carpenter. As we mentioned in the study session, this is a small piece of property that is in Aiken County. And for a Scrivener's error, the tax parcel number was not properly entered on the original ordinance. So it's really just a cleaning up some of the paperwork that we had at that time. Any additional comments from council? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Dickert?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Presnell?
Yes.
Mr. Toole?
Yes.
The chair also votes yes, so it's unanimous 7-0, passing the ordinance on first reading. Moving on to item number 8, which is in finance. It's resolution number 2021-05, resolution approving financing terms for the financing of vehicles and equipment. Tammy, would you like to again just give a brief overview of what we're doing here, please?
Yes, sir. This is our annual lease purchase that City Council has already approved through the budget process for vehicles and equipment that we use in our regular operations. This resolution is to accept the low bid of 0.79% by BB&T Truist Bank. We received 9 proposals with a range of 0.79 up to 5%. And we have recommended that council award the lease purchase to BB&T. This is accepting the terms and the rate provided by them.
And I think, as you mentioned earlier, Tammy, this was basically already included in the budget, but this is a paperwork action requested and required by the bank. Okay, thank you. Council, any comments? The total amount being financed is in round figures $1,700,000. But as indicated, this has already been authorized and approved by the calendar year 2021 budget. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
I'll second.
Was that Mr. Dickert and Pat? Okay, thank you. Any other comments, council?
I'll just say, as if people missed out during study session, this is a lower interest rate than staff assumed when putting together the budget. So this is good news. So great job to staff.
Yeah, thank you. And I certainly second those comments as well. You can see, actually, I didn't realize the range of proposals, but it was quite broad. So we got a very good rate. Since there are no citizen comments, I'll go ahead and call the question again by roll. Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Dickert?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Presnell?
Yes.
Mr. Toole?
Yes.
The chair also votes yes. It passes unanimously by a vote of 7 to 0. Moving on to item number 9. It's resolution number 2021-06, authorizing the city of North Augusta to enter into a professional services contract with the Lower Savannah Council of Governments to perform planning services for the 2021 Comprehensive Plan 5-year update. The chair will recommend approval of this resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Brooks, thank you. Let's see, Libby, do you want to give a brief summary, Libby, of the resolution before us?
I certainly can. This is the required 5-year update. The state of South Carolina, excuse me, I almost slipped there. Not like I haven't been here for almost 3 years. But the state of South Carolina requires you to update your comprehensive plan every 5 years with a full rewrite every 10. And this is our 5-year update. We were able to, through the Lower Savannah COG, obtained a very, very good price for the update. And if you have any particular questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
I'll just comment that this resolution has a not to exceed amount of $25,000. Which I would agree is a very good price. And I think it'd be beneficial also to get the COG involved in the comprehensive plan. I know it's a good opportunity at the 5-year point to relook at where we are. Any other comments from council? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Thank you, Libby. Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Dickert?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Presnell?
Yes.
Mr. Toole?
Yes.
The chair also votes yes. The resolution is approved by a vote of 7 to 0. Moving on to item number 10. This is resolution number 2021-07, reprioritizing projects and funding for the Aiken County Capital Project Sales Tax 2. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Mr. Presnell, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Toole, thank you both. I'll leave it up to Tom or to Jim to tackle this and provide some background and some explanation.
I'll take a swing at it. So for the mayor and council, this has to do with the movement of some funds from CPST2 into a road resurfacing project involving 5 Notch Road. And so SCDOT has 2 separate projects involving 5 Notch Road, one in Edgefield County and one in Aiken County. And we had an opportunity to add to that existing contract on the Aiken County side to extend the 5 Notch Road paving all the way down to Georgia Avenue. So the city had already determined that we were going to pave or repave Five Notch Road during this fiscal year, but by adding on to the state contract, we have an opportunity and an ability to really see for our citizens that road paved all the way from Georgia Avenue all the way into Edgefield County. In order to do that, though, we have to move a certain amount of money out of CPSD2, which part of the CPSD2 funds were set aside for road resurfacing projects. And so this fits very neatly with that construct. And so we have a fleeting, if you will, opportunity because a contract has already been established through SCDOT. And so we'd like to have the opportunity to move this money to pair it with our existing C fund money this fiscal year to be able to start this project. And this project is slated to be completed by the end of November of this year, 2021. And I'll turn it over to Tom Zeser if he has any other comments he'd like to add to that.
I know you nailed it again. Covered it well, but I can also add that the County CTC action, in their action this evening, did approve this request. So it sounds like we have some details to work out on the contract with them, but I'm confident we can do that.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. So, Mr. Mayor, I think that covers our staff estimate for item number 10. And I'll turn it back to you unless you have subject to comments or questions from you or the council.
I just want to clarify with Tom that the details need to be worked out, but as a general rule, we've got all the approvals contingent upon council approving this tonight to move forward.
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
Yeah, contingent upon some details worked out with the approval that was at the CTC meeting, and with council's approval tonight, we'll be able to move ahead with this without delay.
Yeah, that's my understanding. We just have to the details involve just the conveyance of the additional funds that the city's providing. How we're going to make that happen.
Yes, sir. I think to answer your other question is yes, this is contingent upon council approval. I cannot move any CPST2 funds around out of the CPST2 bin into this project without the express approval of the council.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Council, any comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. I'll again call the question. Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Dickert?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Presnell?
Yes.
Mr. Toole?
Yes.
The chair also votes yes. This resolution is approved unanimously by a vote of 7-0. Thank you. Moving on now to item number 11. This is the Planning Commission Recommendation Memorandum number 21-010. The West Martintown Road Corridor Study. This is being provided by the Planning Department as information by council. I think I'll first say we will accept this for information without objection. If you have it, so indicate or say it. Okay, this is accepted without objection. So, Libby, would you like to now just provide a little background?
Certainly. January of 2020, the City Council commissioned a study of the West Martintown corridor due to ongoing growth down that corridor. And this study is the result of that study, or this memo is a result of that study. The Planning Commission reviewed it at their February 18th meeting and has provided their recommendations and ranking for projects they believe are a priority on this corridor. If you have any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Maybe you can tell us what the next steps are in terms of the council.
Certainly, staff is requesting that with the Planning Commission recommendation for adoption, that council will potentially also adopt the study so that it can be used to prioritize when we go, for instance, to ask for funding from arts and other funding partners to complete some of these projects. We know which ones you guys prefer and which would have a priority when we go into these discussions.
Okay, thank you. Rachel, did you have something you wanted to add? I just saw your camera come back on. I didn't.
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Just giving you an opportunity. Any other comments by council?
Libby, I know that we're just receiving this information tonight, which is fine, but will we have a discussion on this? Because, and I don't want to get into a long, drawn-out one tonight, but looking at some of the recommendations and how much it costs and things of that nature, we will have the chance to discuss this at a later date. Is that correct?
That's at the pleasure of council.
Well, I think it's a valid request, and Jim, if you'll go ahead and figure a time to schedule that for a study session, and preferably before it comes up for a vote.
Certainly, sir. We intended on presenting this for a vote at the next council meeting, but if you'd like to have some time to have an open discussion on this, we'll include this as a study session item at our next council meeting, and we'll push a potential vote on this to adopt into the first April council meeting that we have, if that's amenable to all the council members.
Well, is there a driving constraint on having it at the next council meeting?
I don't think so. I think it was just trying to be efficient, unless Libby's going to tell me I'm missing a timeline.
No.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and give us time to digest it. I know it's been out for almost a month, I think, Libby, that you first provided it to us. But let's go ahead and council get familiar with it. So in 2 weeks, we can have all the questions answered and a good discussion, because ultimately it sounds like it's going to require this body to prioritize the efforts and then start figuring out how the funds will be acquired for it. So I think that's the best plan, and it's consistent with, I think, council's desire to have a chance to discuss items and review it before it comes to vote.
I mean, this is just a receipt from the planning commission. I mean, there's nothing we need to vote on as far. I guess, Libby, at the end of the day, I mean, I've got a question on several of these items. So, I mean, if we receive it, does that mean then you can go ahead and start planning for funds without us talking about any of the projects on there? Or are we just receiving this and then, I'm trying to understand all that.
Council, and this is really just a tactic, if you will. Sorry to jump in there, Libby. We could have either presented this in a study session, or we could have presented it as we are here, to the council as a receipt of information. So either way, the council is not locked into to making a decision at this point in time. So as you go through today, this is really just you doing a handshake with the staff, saying that you've received the information and that we will not be able to really execute anything until you actually have a formal vote on adoption of the study. And so if you all want to be able to take a look at this study in a little more comprehensive way, and if you have specific questions or things you'd like to have answered, we can do that in a subsequent study session at our next council meeting. And then if we feel like we've answered all those questions as staff and council's given us that kind of sense, then we'll move that to the next council meeting after that for adoption, which is the vote that will actually kind of lock this in place, if you will, really just from a prioritization perspective, and allows the staff to pursue a funding strategy, for those items. And Libby, please correct me if I've misspoken on any of those.
And this is a procedural step that's taken quite frequently, I think, with information provided from the Planning Commission presented to council for information. So we've seen this in the past, and I suspect we'll continue to see it. So I do think the plan we've laid out tonight, Jim, to have a discussion next time and then any votes subsequent to that is the proper approach. Because I know I've printed it out and haven't spent the time to review it. So I'll certainly step up saying I appreciate the additional time. Thank you.
That's
Okay.
fine. Next council.
Okay, thank you. That completes the formal agenda items. Do we have any administrative reports tonight?
No, sir. I think we covered all of our items throughout the council meeting.
Rachel, you have anything? Giving you every chance, you know. Okay, council, any comments?
Yes, whatever happened with the project, you know, doing the sidewalks from Paul Knox to the high school? That, you know, kids walking from Paul Knox Middle, Paul Knox Middle to North Augusta, the ones that are on the high school teams.
Councilwoman, I would tell you that Rachel Moody and I walked the ground with Tom Zeeser and his crew to look at that project. That project is still going to occur. It just takes a while working through with the state. But the intention is to have that project done by the end of this calendar year.
Okay, thank you.
Rachel, do you want to jump in?
I was just going to mention we're still waiting for the participation agreement from SCDOT. Most of you may be familiar with that. The participation agreement is the official word that we get the grant funds. So we don't want to start the project without getting that official word, because then there's no guarantee we'll receive the grant funding. We're not sure why there is a delay. I believe we're experiencing this on a couple of our SCDOT projects.
Rachel, thank you. That was a much more artful way of putting it than I did.
She's more practiced than we are, Jim.
I guess I don't know who has the answer to this, but with the governor lifting a bunch of restrictions, is this the last virtual meeting? I'd like to go back in person as soon as everybody feels safe with it. I think that gives the public more of a chance to interact and ask questions too. But, I just feel like we get more accomplished in person. So I'm gonna throw that out there. I don't know whose decision, but I was just gonna throw that out there and ask if we have any plans to go back to in-person meetings in the immediate future.
I will say that Jim and I had a brief discussion of that this morning. We needed to do a little more research in terms of what the governor's executive order and declaration of the state of emergency entails, if it's still in existence, or and that will govern. In my own personal opinion, on a night such as tonight, where it's generally non items that are generally, I'll call them more routine. My own preference is that we remain virtual, just not for our sake so much as for those in attendance. I recognize that the face-to-face is certainly a much preferred venue. But boy, there's been a number of people around that just recently, as some of us can attest, that have had COVID without necessarily knowing where the infection was acquired, and it's still a disease that bears paying attention to. I know we're working through the concert in terms of to coincide with the dedication of the amphitheater, currently scheduled for April 24th, and still working on making sure that we have adequate spacing for that. So an answer to your question is it's under discussion. I could have saved a lot of time if I just said that, wouldn't I? Any other comments, questions? Okay, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.